Gosh, I'm super excited to share this video with you guys. My name is Matt Tometz, and I'm going to take you through the second video of a multi-part series on how to read research literature. In the first video, I created context for this whole series. I explained why it's important to read literature, why it's important to read literature well, understanding the scientific method, and just the research process and what goes into a research study. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to read an abstract, the introduction, and the references, as well as give you actionable things you guys can start doing tomorrow to become a better consumer of research literature. There's a joke in research that the most read part of a paper is the title. And although the title is technically the first thing of a study, we're gonna start with the abstract. So what is the goal of an abstract and what's the point of it? It's basically just to provide a snapshot of the study, a brief summary on the introduction, the methods, the results, and the conclusions. And if I had to give you one tip for the abstract, it's read it. It's there for a reason. The worst thing that could possibly happen, which has never happened to me totally, is getting halfway through a paper, you read the whole intro, you read the methods, and you realize this paper does nothing for me. What's the point of it? And then you go back to the abstract and you're like, man, if I only read the abstract, I would not have read this paper at all. You could be looking for keywords, for example. In my own research, there's about 4 different ways to calculate heart rate load, or basically a score of the athlete's total session based on their heart rate data. And the last thing I would want is to get all the way through a paper and realize that they were using a different one of the 4 equations than one I was specifically looking for. Or you could be looking for a specific population. You could be looking for specific methods or just a variety of different methods. And you also want to look at the conclusions. You wouldn't want to make it all the way through a paper when they already said that they didn't really find anything significant. Or if they don't find anything significant and you think it's interesting, then as you're reading it, you can try to figure out why it didn't work and how you would do it better. So by understanding the snapshot, the context, right? It's all about context. The abstract creates context for the rest of the paper. It'll just put you in a better spot when you read the rest of it if you know the snapshot of what the paper is consisting of. If the abstract lines up with your reasoning for clicking on the paper in the first place, then continue with the rest of the paper. Next, the introduction and the references are actually pretty related, but first I'll talk on the introduction. So what is the purpose of an introduction section of a paper? It's to explain and justify the reasoning for the paper. It's to review what has happened in that topic or what hasn't happened and what gap they're trying to fill. Basically create more context as to why their study should be completed and why you should read it. Questions you can ask yourself when reading the introduction are, is there a logical sequence of it? Does it go from broad to narrow? Are there certain big claims or assumptions being made in their reasoning? Are they actually going to fulfill their purpose based on their review of the literature? Is it going to help contribute to that specific topic? And the introduction, and the rest of the paper for that matter, really isn't made complete without the references. So what's the goal of the references? It's to give the reader a specific section where they can go back and check why the researchers are making the claims that they are. Now, I'm not saying go to the references and find and read each paper one by one. Another realization I had about the references was instead of just searching for specific papers, you can find relevant papers relative to the one you're reading from the references. That's kind of the point of the references. You really just need one paper relevant to what you want, and then you can use the references to continue your search in a more specific way. You can be a lot more efficient with it. As well, you can familiarize yourself with popular names in that field, researchers that have published a lot of papers. As well, you can double check the researchers to see if they're referencing the big foundational studies on that topic, and if they've really done a good job of their research review. And as always, if there's something you might not agree with, something you're not familiar with, you should definitely go into the references and read that study for yourself. Now, actionable things to become a better consumer of research literature is actively highlighting, taking notes, annotating, whatever it may be, on specific things in the abstract that you want to read later on in the paper, in the introduction. And when you get to that part, write down what reference number and then go find it in the references. So when becoming a better consumer of research literature, it might seem a little tedious taking notes, highlighting, annotating, but it's only going to expedite your process for not only understanding that paper, but also finding more relevant studies in that specific topic, as well as whenever you go back to that paper, if it's to do a research review or to write your own manuscript, right, and to find references for your paper, you're going to have that paper already dissected. You're going to know why they're saying certain things. You're going to know what studies they are using to justify those claims and things like that. So you definitely get out what you put into your research consumption. So to sum everything up, the purpose of the abstract is to determine whether the paper is worth your time to read or not. The purpose of the introduction is to justify their claims, to say what gap in the literature their paper will fill, and basically just explain why their study is worth doing and worth reading. And the references is where you can double check to see if their claims make sense, if they have a good understanding of that state of literature on that topic, and for you to find more relevant studies to progress your knowledge. As always, you can get all the gear I use for my videos from Amazon in the description below. Please smash that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date to my content. Please like the video if you like the video, comment down below for feedback and what you want to see next.